There are a variety of file formats that you need to familiarize yourself with when you're working with images in Photoshop. To simplify, I'm going to divide them into three areas of the workflow: the original, source or capture file formats, then the working formats or the master file formats, which will most likely be like your multi-layered, retouch and composited images in Photoshop, and finally the output formats. These are the formats which are used to output your work for specific devices. So let's start with the capture file formats. When you start with a photograph, the most common file formats are JPEG and RAW. So JPEG is currently the most widely used file format in photography because it's the default file format that mobile devices such as phones capture, and it's almost always an option on a digital camera. Its popularity is based primarily on the fact that JPEG files are really small, so you can store a large number of photos on a single device or a card, and then they can be written to those devices very quickly. However, in order to decrease a photograph's file size, the JPEG file format throws away information through a process called as lossy compression. So the quality of a JPEG can range greatly depending on how much of that information is thrown away. Unfortunately, on some devices like mobile phones, we don't often have a lot of control over the amount of compression that's applied to those images. When the highest quality settings or the least amount of compression is applied, it's usually unnoticeable to the eye in most circumstances. But these files have significantly less flexibility when making adjustments such as brightening, shadows, or darkening highlights in the image after capture. So when given the option, I would choose not to capture in a lossy compression format like JPEG, but in a RAW format instead. So, if you're preparing your images to be printed, it's probably best to ask what format the lab or the service provider prefers. I mean, ideally, they would request flattened TIFF or the PSD file formats in order to maintain the highest quality possible. But often it's much faster and therefore much more desirable to upload or transfer and print JPEG files. So if you are sending JPEG files to be printed, just make sure that the quality settings remain high. Now, if you are saving files to view on a screen, such as a phone or a computer, or you're posting images online, JPEG once again is the most common format because of its ability to create those small files that download quickly. But there are a bunch of specialty formats that I need to at least mention. The PNG or the PNG is a popular file format to save graphics for the web when the graphic requires a single layered or a flattened file, but still needs to display transparent areas. For example, a PNG file would be an ideal solution for displaying like a round logo or a button with rounded edges that require those transparent edge areas because the PNG format will render smooth edges around that transparency. So like I said, this file format is most commonly used for graphics, like a logo or more flat looking artwork, not necessarily a photograph. Now, the GIF file format is also a single layer or a flattened file format. It has a lossy compression applied, but in a different way than a JPEG. So as to save as a GIF file, you have to convert your image to a different color mode called index color, which allows only 256 colors. Because of that, this file format is also commonly used for graphics like logos or more flat-looking artworks. Although the GIF files does support transparency, it only supports one level, which means if you do have that circular logo, the edges are going to look jagged because GIFs have the unique ability to contain an animation within the file. Today, they are most often used for creating ad banners and other short animations to be viewed on the screen. Photoshop also supports several popular video and audio file formats such as .mov or .264, AIFF, and MP3 for working with video and audio within the Photoshop's timeline. The Photoshop PDF file format is very convenient when you need to distribute a secure document. For example, you might need to send to a client a set of images or a mock-up for a design of an unannounced project which is really important that no one else can see or open. So you have to save it as a Photoshop PDF. The settings enable you to password protect the file from being opened or from being printed. Alright, that wraps up this particular overview or the most important file formats that you will run across while working with Photoshop. And I hope now you're absolutely clear with what the extensions like JPEG, TIFF, GIF, also PSD, and the Adobe document formats are. So with this, we end this lecture and we'll see you again in the next lecture. Till that time, goodbye.